Welcome to the 99th edition of the Sales Podcast, where we bring the cash. Welcome, my friends, to the 99th edition of the Sales Podcast. Can you believe it? 99 sessions. Today we've got Mr. Joe Ingram, fellow SoCal sales pro. You want to listen to this interview. We went a little long, but Joe has spent time in the legal profession. He has spent time in the car sales and the trifecta, insurance sales. So how about that for an introduction? You may want to hold on to your wallet, but actually, it was a great interview. Joe owns his own business. He does sales training, works a lot in the car industry still. But his advice is timeless. It is needed, especially now we get into technology versus old school face-to-face and on the phone appointments and negotiation and persuasion. And people need to hear what Joe's talking about, all right? So I'm launching this on December 18th, 2014. Just picked up my mom from the airport yesterday. Good old LAX. You got to love it. Goodness gracious. But it's that time of year, holidays, end of year, New Year's planning. Got folks coming over tonight, a little dessert party, looking at some lights. So enjoy the holiday spirit. Hope you're listening to this, maybe on a long drive with the family. Maybe you're going to see the family out of town. You can all learn about sales training and marketing as you go. You know, it's the same advice I'm giving my son. My oldest, he's applying to college right now. Helped him write his essay for Yale. He's applying to Vanderbilt, Stanford. Kid's got some skills. But he knows, you know, I'm telling him a couple of things. And one is, don't get into debt for college. Two is, I'm not paying your way through college. And three is, understand, you know, unless you have a passion for something where you need a specific degree, right? Like an engineer, like an attorney, a doctor. Okay, if you don't need a degree for that exact skill, that exact profession, then look at the world of being an entrepreneur, right? Owning your own business. You know, I've worked with a lot of companies, a lot of startups. I've had a lot of jobs, and I was always let down. I was always shocked, honestly, at either the incompetence, a lot of times the corruption even. I mean, outright corruption and fraud, manipulation of numbers at people at all of the companies I worked at. And it seemed like the bad guys would fall forward. They would fail forward. And it was just shocking. And, you know, Congress will pass these laws, right? Like Sarbanes-Oxley, you got the CFOs, whatever, they now have to sign off, you know, on their financials because they were all claiming ignorance after the dot-com bubble burst. You know, your HIPAA compliance and healthcare, you know, they're like, protect our data, you know, tell the truth in your stock statements and whatever. So, but Congress cannot legislate morality, right? So when you see somebody above you at your own company, even in sales, when you're calling on somebody, realize they're just a human being. They have nothing on you, okay? At your core, you have a soul, right? Created in the image of God, so you are equals in that regard, okay? Maybe they're the CEO or VP or something, a president of a huge division, but at their core, they are motivated by sales, right? They have their own goals that they need to achieve. Even if they're in operations or HR or finance, there is selling going on. They are pushing their agenda, pushing their initiatives, okay, trying to persuade and lead people to see things their way. And you're coming in there with a solution, all right? So you've got to figure out how to connect with these people. Do not be awestruck. Do not think you're not worthy to be in their presence, okay? Show up with an agenda. Have a reason for being there, understand the problems that you solve, take control of that meeting. You know, and one thing I haven't talked about in a while, go to thesalesagenda.com, okay, and you can get my sales agenda where I offer this for free. Let me pull this up. I haven't looked at it in a while. Actually, you gotta love having URLs that you can forward, and that's one thing I'm always telling people to do. Get simple names that are memorable that you can give to people that you can forward. Okay, so yeah, go visit thesalesagenda.com and get my free sales agenda. This is literally what I started doing in 2006 in technology sales to take control of my sales. Okay, take control of the situation, have an agenda, get an answer. Even if the answer was no, hearing no early in a sales cycle is a good thing. Okay, it lets you go focus where you need to focus, on somebody that has a need and the ability to pay you for what you do. So go check that out, all right? thesalesagenda.com. So now, since I told you Joe has a background in cars, I found this nice little car acronym. So I'll read a few of these before we get started. I thought they were kind of funny. But Audi, the car acronym for Audi is Accelerates Under Demonic Influence. And if you've seen some of these new Audis, those things are fast. BMW is Born Moderately Wealthy, Break My Windows, or Bought My Wife. Ouch. Buick is Big, Ugly, Indestructible Car Killer. And I love this one on Chevrolet. I'm not a Chevy fan anymore since their bailout, but oh well, I digress. Chevrolet, car has extensive valve rattle on long, extended trips. So any Ford fans out there, you can tell that to your Chevrolet friends. The other one on Chevrolet is cheap, hardly efficient, virtually runs on luck every time. I love that one. All right, so there you go. So now let us move into the Sales Podcast Creed, which is, today is my day. I work diligently towards my goals, which are bigger than me. I bite off more than I can chew because only then will I truly know my current limits, and surpassing them becomes my new goal for today. Through education, mastermind mentors, and bold, decisive action, today will be better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better yet. I'm ready to produce. Now, let's bring on Joe Ingram. Joe Ingram, fellow SoCal sales training veteran. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, Wes, and how about yourself?
Hey, I'm asking the questions, okay?
Yes. See, I'm always going to fight you for control.
Right there. You see, you're trying to take over. I mean, I want you to teach everybody how to do that, but don't do it to me.
Yes, exactly. So did it bother you when I did that? Oh, there I go again. Never mind.
Do you know what I just did to you right there? You're still kind of wondering, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So you're fresh from your vacation. Where were you? You were in some tropical place that rained a lot, huh?
Yeah, I went to the Dominican Republic, a little town called Punta Cana, and stayed at a resort out there. So.
Very cool. Well, for our listeners that do not know who the BDC genius Joe Ingram is, would you mind taking a minute or two, give us the lowdown on Joe, and we will go down the rabbit hole?
Absolutely. I'll start off with, let's see. I'm an electrical engineer by my degree.
Get out of town.
Of which that just really means I'm really good at doing flowcharts, but I was not good at keeping my mouth shut with the rest of the engineers. So engineers aren't really people that are boring. They just get really excited about boring topics. That's what I've learned. And so in dealing with that, it was always, could you shut up? Could you shut up? And I'm like, but I'm done. And they're like, but not everybody else is. And so that automatically ramped me into management. And I worked aerospace manufacturing for 10 years. I always did really well when I came into the corporate and swim in the red tape with all the government funding and things like that. Mm-hmm. And bounced out of that, went over to a criminal defense law firm, which of course has no bearing whatsoever, but just happened to find someone, connect, and turned around, and that's where I got my taste for the sales side of things. Ah. And so I went into a criminal defense law firm. It was nationwide, which means he had 2 states. So one on each side, so he can say nationwide. So they were making about $300,000 gross in sales, and so in about 9 months, taking over, building a call center, building their outside sales team, took them from the $300,000 a month to $1 million a month in 9 months, and opened up in seven states. And so it was a great thing, and that's where I found out that I have a flavor for the phone. And it's like, hey, you know what? Let's make some money over the phone and get some people to get some commitments that most people don't get over the phone, and see how that works. And that spun me. After about 2 years with them, I realized that I was working at a criminal defense law firm. And the owner had said in my interview, he said, "You realize the better we do, the worse the public thinks of us." And I said, I looked at him, and in all truth to you, Wes, I looked at him and I said, "Listen, I'm morally and ethically challenged. Show me how to make some money." And so he looked at me and said, "That sounds great." And he put it in there. But that's where I got the taste of commission, because he looked at me and said, "Hey," and I'd worked 10 years, you know, as a team leader and a division leader and all of these things, but I was paid the same as the guy next to me who was in that same pay scale.
Yep.
And that's what frustrated me. Somebody with less responsibility and less things were getting the same because they were there and at the same pay scale. So when I got there, he said, "Hey, I'll guarantee your salary for the first 90 days. And he goes, but I'm also going to put you on this commission pay plan. Whatever you make more is what you're going to get." And I didn't make it through the first month. I had actually made about 50% more on the commission pay plan by the 20th of the month.
Wow.
with my team. And I said, "You know what? I'm done with this whole give me a salary. Let me get paid off of my blood, sweat, and tears and what I'm doing." And that gave me the taste for the actual commission side of the world.
Right.
And then bounced out of there after 2 years, when I sat there crying like a baby reading a case file. That one of the people calling in looking for their attorney, and I was talking with him, and then I read his whole file and started crying, saying, "I can't believe I'm helping these people, and these are some less than genuine people." Mm-hmm. So I called the owner about 11 o'clock at night. I was in Santa Monica, and I told him, "Hey, you know what? I'm done." He goes, "You lasted a lot longer than I thought you would."
Yep.
And I said, "That's great." And at that point, I jumped right over into the automotive business. And so that's where I've stayed within the automotive space for about the last 14 years. And that's where I've done it, is I jumped in to manage putting phone rooms into car dealerships. And so I was hired on to a couple dealerships and learned the art of talking to somebody over the phone about a car, as opposed to selling a car, changing the different perspective, and selling the appointment as opposed to selling the actual product.
Right.
And it made a huge difference in what we were looking for, because previously I was selling the whole entire product over the phone and getting somebody on. So I started doing that, did that, was very successful for a while. They told me, "You can't become a general manager of a dealership. That's the person who runs everything." They said, "You can't get there from the position you started at." So that really upset me. And so I put my working shoes on, and 4 years later, I was actually general manager of a dealership. And I said, "Okay, this is wonderful, but this isn't what I want either, because it doesn't fulfill me with where I'm sitting." Right. And I think it's just, the over-ambitious side of most of us that have the entrepreneurial spirit. I was working within a company, but trying to make it my own. Right. And at that point, I got recruited by the number one automotive sales trainer that was out there, the Joe Verdi Group, and he hired me to manage his inside sales team that was calling dealerships to sell them the product over the phone. And so I went in there, I took their lowest producing team. So they broke up the team, and the existing manager took the superstars. I took the other guys that, needed more hand holding and coaching and training and mentorship. And in about 5 months, we increased their sales revenue by about 54%. And everybody was excited. We're like, "Hey, this is the way to go." And we had the best experience at that point. And I took off from there, and the car business kept calling back. And then I went out and I started an insurance business on my own. Had a couple mentors that helped me out. I still have that today. It's just some additional income that comes in on the side as I override policies and residual income, which always helps. And then I started training on my own at that point to actually build what we call the Business Development Center, hence the BDC Genius. And I started putting business development centers, which is taking the support structure from your producers. So if you look and say, "I'm a producer, I go out, I produce," most of us that are actually really, really good at sales are really, really bad at the details, and it's like, okay, well then if you look at, and I was in the automotive space, so it became an easy transition. I said, "Listen, the sales guy's bad at following up. They're only really good when somebody shows up to look at a car. That's when they turn on their personality. And they got about 3-4 hours of greatness in them. And then after that, they just turn it off and they're done. And they want the next person to put on the show for. And calling somebody the next day who told you no the day before is really difficult for a lot of people with their personality, especially in the sales world. And I said, you know what, why don't we just start putting these phone rooms within the dealership, and we will do the busy work and the other things to regenerate and re-stimulate the customer back into the dealership and get the actual sale that we might have missed the first time. And then we learned that the guys that can sell face-to-face are typically really bad on the phone because they're body language communicators.
Right.
And so they get a customer over the phone, and I laugh when I watch people knock the phone out of their own hand because they're so busy waving their arms and their hands or trying to give directions and pointing to the left and telling the customer in the car. So when you get off the freeway, turn, and you got to tap them on the shoulder and go, you might want to tell them left because they can't see your hand. And I go, okay, you're in the wrong element. So then I took the people that don't typically do well face to face, the auditory listeners and those kind of people, and bring them, and I put them on the phone and taught them what to say and what do you say when somebody objects to something. And then we started having amazing success in a lot of dealerships. And I just started going from dealership to dealership with my own company, putting that on and actually building these phone centers that are still in operation today. And so, I mean, you're looking 10, 12 years down the line, these people are actually still have people in their room that are doing it and following the same processes and getting the results. But the customer gets a better experience. And it's just, how do we actually make sure that stays consistent?
Right. So, criminal defense, life insurance, auto sales. I mean, I think if you run for office, you could pretty much be like the slimiest guy ever.
Yeah, absolutely. In the socially acceptable scale, auto salespeople are about 2 rungs up the ladder from lawyers. So I was actually moving up at that point. So, but the average person ranks their pleasure scale of buying a car in between getting a root canal or being sued. And there's the lawyers again. So I'd rather just, avoid the fact that they would like to go get a dentist to drill in their mouth because the dentist uses Novocaine. And so, but the goal is to try and flip that around and see if we can get them to actually enjoy the experience of buying a car and making it a pleasurable experience.
Yeah. Well, you've done it for a long time, so obviously you're teaching them the right things because, in my training, when I say the word salesperson, and I'll write it down on a piece of paper and I'll wait for the word that comes to mind, right? And always, one of the first 3 words that's shouted out is pushy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I talk about, I got a BMW back in January of this year from the local place here, Borsted BMW in Murrieta, Temecula.
Uh-huh.
And what a great experience, And I refer people to this guy, David Townsend. Go look him up, everybody. It's worth the drive if you're in Southern California. He's a good dude. I mean, it was not a dirty, cheesy experience. So, I mean, if you can make car salespeople come across as pros, then you can train anybody, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, it truly is that. I've ventured into training customer service departments for online retailers. So a lot of the larger eBay clientele. So when you have a big distribution market coming in from China, then they tend to build little small call centers here in the United States, and they don't train anybody because they don't know what to say or what to do.
Right.
And so I had a buddy of mine connect me with somebody and say, here, could you just come in and help them? I did a 5-hour training on a Saturday and sat with his team, put together some books, put together a manual. They videotaped me. And a month later, I went back in. The owner said, hey, come have lunch with us. So we went and sat down with them. And I said, so can you tell me what's going on? I said, I'm not getting a lot of feedback from you. So he goes, well, I brought all the managers at lunch with me. And he said, how many heat calls, people upset, demanding their money back, completely irate, were we getting a day? And the guy says, we used to get 5 to 7 a day that our reps couldn't handle that got elevated to us. And he's like, wow, that's bad. And he goes, how much are we at now since we did the training? And this is 30 days later, and the guy says 0.
Whoa.
He says, we're at 0. And he says, okay, don't lie just because Joe's sitting at the table with us. And I said, and I'm excited about it. And he goes, no, we're at 0. He goes, he gave them enough to handle everything that the customer's throwing at him. so that the customer still feels valued during the process, and we can actually help them. And it took management empowering the employee, up to a certain monetary level, but everything was handled within that monetary level for the customer. And eBay scores went up, satisfaction, all the feedback, and they were able to sell more. So it's a great deal.
So how would you say? I don't really want to look at how things have changed, right? I like to look at how things have stayed the same, because people that are listening to this might say, well, I'm not in sales, or I'm not in insurance, or I'm not an attorney, or I'm not an electrical engineer, or I don't do anything on eBay. People always want to find the negatives, right? Or,
right.
Yeah, the stuff you set up, okay, great. In 2000, that was 14 years ago. There wasn't social media. There wasn't iPhones. There wasn't all this stuff. Things are totally changed. This is no good. So, I mean, what have you seen that stayed consistent? Like, what are some things, like some nuggets you could give our listeners that are in the trenches, making sales, things that they have to do,
absolutely,
to grow and stay ahead?
Okay, here's what I've looked over, and I mean up until 2 days ago, or up until I went on vacation to the Dominican Republic, I was actually still living, breathing, and putting this in place with salespeople and getting it to them. A lot of times, your sales department is afraid to ask for an appointment. Okay, it's one of those things where you stop and realize if someone's contacting you. Now, I focus most of my training on the phone because that's where I believe the phone is at. What happened when the internet boom came in the mid 2000s, we started getting all of this, hey, everybody needs to focus on just emails and templates and sending things back and forth, and it was forget about the phone. Mm-hmm. Well, the largest increase right now for all traffic that's out on the internet is click to call.
Wow.
Because of the iPhone, because of your Android, because you have a smartphone, when you think about this, even if you're going to go ask Siri or somebody, go, hey, can you find me a restaurant? The first thing she says, do you want directions? Do you want me to call?
Yep.
And a lot of places will say, hey, I want to call. Yep. And then the phone is ringing, and how you pick up that phone determines whether or not the customer is going to like you. And if they like you, right, are they going to actually believe you enough to buy from you? Right. But you got to be able to be that person they want to talk to over the phone. That hasn't changed, except everybody thought they can get away from the telephone, and it's right back in front of our face again. And truly the ones that never let it go are the ones that had the most success, which was, I don't care how the customer contacts you. If I'm a salesperson, Wes, this is how I break down salespeople. I say there's typically going to be 3 different types of salespeople. I put this out on my Twitter all the time on Joe Ingram tweets, but there's 3 people. There's a relationship builder, right? That's the person who's out there trying to be everybody's friend and trying to do all these things with the customer. There's a problem solver. I call them my little pain seekers. They're the ones that go out and, needle you. You don't like taking their phone call. Why do you not like taking their phone call? Because they ask you those loaded questions, right? And they go, well, do you think, your business would do better if this improved? Right, whichever product line I have going. Well, it's a loaded question. The person on the other end of the phone is rolling their eyes. Right, and that's the problem we have, is that we're using, in the sales department, what is normal is that we continue to use the wrong material over and over again, and we end up just having to work too hard. Instead of keeping track of what we're doing and saying, here, let's make something better, we have an answer to a question. Somebody says, well, what would this do for my company? We have one answer that we get about a 10% success rate with, and we keep using that because we have nothing better. Mm-hmm. Right? And then we have to go online. We have to go listen to somebody else, and we have to find, okay, thank goodness, there's Wes's podcast. Let's get on there and find something to say. And I'm going to try the next thing, and I'm going to get up to 25%. And now I've got something that I can do. And the third person that I call these is the third person, which is the one I think that, is the one that brings the most value, is the challenger. Okay, and I'm one of those individuals, when I come to sell somebody, I'm okay to say this isn't right for you. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with saying this isn't going to work. This isn't a good mix for us. Nothing benefits us except a short-term, hey, I made commission that's going to end up becoming a chargeback when I go ahead and sign a deal with a customer that's not the right customer.
Yep.
And I'm not giving the weaker salespeople the excuse to say, well, he wasn't right for us, and that's what I'm going to say, because you're going to tell me it's more than half the time the customer's not right for us. And I don't think it is. I think it's about 20% of the time you're going to have to tell that customer this isn't the right move for you. And so the problem solver is going to needle you and tell you, here, I can solve your problem. But they're not really listening well enough to actually find out what the true problem is. Mm-hmm. The relationship builder, the sales cycle's too long. We spend way too long trying to build a relationship. Let's go golfing. Let's go do this. Let's talk about your kids. Let's talk about this. On the challenger side of things, you know what? If I'm looking to sell you something, I want to get into what it is you do and what it is that's actually out there. And then I'm going to consult for you and let you know if I'm there. I flip leads all the time to other people and go, you know what? I'm not the right one for you. For one, looking at your business model, looking where you're at, you can't afford what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We need to fix A, B, and C before we start jumping in on the D, E's, and F's to make money. And I'm the D, E, F. So let's go fix the A, B, C's. Let's go find somebody else that can fix something for you.
Right.
And I think that the challenger mindset, which is I'm not chasing the commission, right? I'm consulting for you from the outside. And it's easier to say that this is how I do it than it is to actually act it, because when we get the commission breath and we start smelling that there's a chance to make some money, right? And I've just found that it always has come back to bite me. Right. And that's always the same in sales, is that we get an overzealous sales guy, and that's where we get the word pushy coming in. Right? It's like, oh, you said you wanted to buy. You answered yes to several of my closing questions on the way through, right? And you're like, okay, my trial close is working. My assumptive close worked. Yes, we're on our way. But it's definitely not where you want to actually put it. You want to sit back and, I will listen to you. I'll find out I'll find out what the pain is. I'll find out what it is you need. But then I'm going to give you a real honest evaluation and an answer that says, here, and it may not be me. And so,
can a young person or a rookie, I mean, how can somebody ramp up that skill set quickly? Because honestly, I got into sales training because I was always curious. I was always learning. Then I found myself getting smarter than my bosses.
Amen.
Right. So, you and I know this. We've done it for 20 plus years, and have the scars to prove it.
Yes.
How can people learn without scars, or are some scars just part of the learning process?
Well, scars are going to be part of it, but the answer is, not everybody has to step on the replaced landmine that we set off a while back.
Right.
So the answer is, you know what, you can get on there. I have no problem with helping people. Again, my focus typically is over the phone. Mm-hmm. And so on my website, I have the contact me page, and I answer questions all the time from people going, okay, well, here's where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking. And, if we need to sit down and set up some kind of coaching, we'll set up a coaching thing that goes through. But for the most part, I'm about giving back to everybody and hoping that the landmine map that I drew, you can avoid on your way through. But you don't have to have 20 years worth of experience in pain. Remember, your sales manager is typically a manager because he was really good in sales. Doesn't mean he was good at managing.
Right.
It just meant that somebody above him said, hey, you're so good at sales, I want you to touch more deals, so why don't you manage a team? And and I found that to be the case in most situations where they don't know how to manage. Mm-hmm. And I was already coming from a management experience, already had that experience and cut my teeth on management. So selling on your own, right, the training pieces that we do is all about how do we enrich the life of the person that's there. So truly what I find is that listening is really one of the biggest keys that most people miss, because exactly.
What'd you say?
Like, I wasn't paying attention to myself either. But when you stop and look, everybody says telling's not selling, right? You got to ask your way to the sale. But that's a really difficult thing to do. And everybody says, well, how do I do that? And the answer is that I always sit back. When I catch myself formulating my response in my head, right, I will actually pinch my own leg while I'm sitting with somebody. Right? Because I'm already thinking that way. We've all sat across from somebody that was just waiting, and you could see it in their face where they're going, shut up, because they disengaged and they stopped listening. Mm-hmm. And they no longer am listening to what it is I'm saying. And that's where you miss all of the meat and potatoes, right? You got all excited about one thing he said, and you're trying to answer that question, and he told you 3 or 4 other things that would just slam dunk the sale. but you were so busy formulating that response and trying to say, okay, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, and you can't actually process any input at the same time you're occupying your brain that way.
I've seen that a lot. I get into that, and I think men are especially prone to this because we just, we're wired to go solve a problem, right?
Amen.
And
Yes.
being stereotypical here, trying to just cut to the chase. But women are more nurturing and want to listen and share. And my wife will tell me, "Look, I'm venting. You don't need to solve anything. Just let me vent." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, it still doesn't work. It still doesn't work. We still sit back and go, I could so fix that if she would just, let's say, okay. Yeah.
So I mean, it's true, right? Just be present.
Yes.
Just hang out. If you just, a lot of times you just kind of nod and, okay, I've heard that before. Oh, tell me more. Oh, wow. They'll just keep talking and they'll tell you how to sell to them.
They'll not only tell you how to sell to them, but they'll actually invite the sale in the process. Because I've had people where all they did was explain to me what their issues were all the way through, and they looked at me and they said, "I like you." Right? My ex-father-in-law, I used to watch him. He had his own business, retail side, and he would have people that showed up at his shop just to talk to him. And he had like a narcolepsy thing going on. He'd fall asleep in the middle of their conversation. And I would watch these people sitting from behind him, watching him going, wow, they so don't even care that he's asleep. And then as soon as they stopped talking, he would wake up and ask the next question. And it was hilarious because they would just start talking again. And then later they go, I love coming in to talk to him.
That's crazy.
He is such a great conversationalist. And I'd laugh, and I'm like, it was your own voice over and over again, and that's really what counted for you, wasn't it?
Yep. So. I always get into that. I learned that from my sales mentor 8 years ago. He said, selling is a calling, serving is its purpose, questioning is the process.
Yes.
And then a sale may be the solution.
Absolutely. It may not. And that's the hardest part for people to understand is that it's not there. And, we are in the age of information, which is everybody's online. Most people don't even realize they generated a sales lead when they asked for information. And a lot of people are sitting there where we call to pounce onto somebody and say, boom, you know what? I need to make a sale, 6 months down the line. I need to make a sale a year from now. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's just going to be about some people have to have a relationship before they'll buy. Okay.
Well, how do you bridge that gap though between, rookies especially, and even seasoned people maybe are just kind of worn out a little bit, need to get a fire back in their step. You can listen for too long, right? At some point, some people are just meandering. How do we walk that line between listening and letting the person just ramble and kind of guide the conversation?
Yeah, well, I tell it when I train anybody, I say, look, you have to have a flexible agenda, but the end point doesn't change. Okay, and so we could get on the freeway right now. Okay, if I'm going to come see you, I'm in Orange County, and I'm going to buzz down the 91 to the 15, and I'm going to take off and come see you down in the Temecula Valley. Well, if there's an accident at the 91 and the 15, then I'm going to get off, take some side streets. It doesn't mean that I turn around and go home and say no. But the end result is still me taking you to that sold that's there. But I don't have to have the same way. Now, I can listen to a whole bunch of music on the way down. But the answer is that are you actually looking to produce, which is all my discussions should be about how my product would solve a problem. All of my discussions, I don't talk to people about their kids and when you go back and forth and go, okay, so now when was the last time you did this? And I'm searching, right? The relationship builder's got to search for that commonality that's there. You know what you have in common? Their business. Talk about it, right? Because their business determines whether or not they actually get to go on a vacation or get to see their children, right? Or provide a lifestyle for them. So talk about that. Fix that one piece. You may get invited into the rest of their world, but I don't need to be that person that says, oh, my kid plays, football, and so does yours. Right. Now we have a segue. No, we don't need that segue, because that will always make your sales calls when you're sitting in front of them or on the phone about something other than business, and now you got to transition back to business. Mm-hmm. Right? And we know the person that you're talking to, who is somebody looking for when they call, when you're a salesperson calling into the person. I always say they're looking for somebody, the person who's on the other phone wants somebody nice, knowledgeable, good listener, low pressure, and concerned. Mm-hmm. Okay? But most importantly, they're looking for someone like them.
Right.
Right? And that's where I find most salespeople have a problem, which is, you know what? I'm Joe, and I'm going to be Joe, and that's it. And we're going to take it or leave it. And I always tell everybody, my wife laughs and says I'm the chameleon, especially over the telephone. When I start talking to a client, when I get off the phone, I have whatever accent they have. Mm-hmm. Right? And she always laughs and she goes, I don't understand this. Exactly. Why is the customer not offended when you get off the phone? And I laugh at her and I say, because to the customer, I just got more and more real, because I reminded them more of them. Mm-hmm. Okay? In the car world, right, I'm coaching and training for a very large Toyota dealership, and a customer calls in. I said, let me take the phone call. And I got it playing through a speaker, but I'm not actually on speaker. And the customer says, hi, I'm looking for the new Toyota Camry. And I said, Camry? There's no E at the end of Camry, right, to put it in there. But I laughed, and I just looked at them, and I said, well, I went right back over and I said, how did you want your Camry equipped? Mm-hmm. Right? And they all look and they're like, it's Camry, Camry. There's no R-E-Y. And I said, as soon as I said that, as soon as I changed the word to Camry, then I'm now insulting the customer by saying you said something wrong.
Right.
And I don't need to disconnect any more than I need to. I'm already a salesperson.
Right.
Go to Google and type in car salesman and see how many pictures you get. Right? The whole experience of the car thing is so bad that Honda had to flip everything around to become helpful Honda people, and they portray everybody as morons. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they're trying to go so far opposite that they can pull this vision that people have of car salespeople back into it.
Right.
And regardless of its car sale, I mean, I've sold over the internet, I've sold over the phone, I've sold face to face, I've sold training, I've sold, anything you want to look at, I've actually sold it. And it's why? Because I get in there and I'm going to be real with the customer, but I'm going to say it in a way in which they can understand it. And how do I get that? By talking to them and understanding what's important to them. I use the words that they use. Back and forth. I laugh all the time when I look at somebody and they go, you know what? I'm looking for an amazing deal. And they go, terrific deals are what we do all day long. And I look at them, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? All you have to do is just say his words right back to him, right? Because there's a picture in your head with the word amazing. Yeah. I don't know if it's not the same picture as me, but whatever you said, there was a picture in your head, and I want to control the picture in the client's head. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so here's a story of what I mean when it comes to controlling the pictures. And it's your words are putting pictures in somebody's heads. Yep. So you'll get the pictures as we go through. I'm a general sales manager of the third largest Toyota store in the nation. So I'm sitting down, and I've got 9 teams that are out selling. And I look at one of the numbers and I go, okay, this guy's got 7 people on his team. And all of a sudden, their customers, they're getting the people in. So they're getting an up, right? An opportunity. Yep. They get that customer. They do a walk around on the vehicle. So they land them on a car, walk around the car where they're explaining it, and then boom, numbers fall off. Mm-hmm. Nobody's driving it. And I'm like, why is no one driving? Everybody else is, tracking their normal numbers. And I'm like, what is happening here? So I grabbed the assistant sales manager that's running this team, and I said, what's going on? He goes, hey, boss, I'm training every day. I said, could you show me the walk-around training? He goes, I'll do it today. So he walked it out there. Now, the guy is, phenomenal salesperson himself, but again, he was put up into management without the skill to manage. And he was probably about 5'2", little bald guy, Italian, always wore silk suits. He was in 2 industries, selling suits and car sales. But to him, he believed he was mafia. Okay, so everything was forget about it, and he would walk around saying this. But he trained his people this way. He would start up in the front and he would pop the hood and he'd look at this car and go, see these crumple zones? You see this and that? This is all to save you in a front impact. You see these big hooks up in the front? And if you look at your new BMW, you'll find them. There's hooks that come off of the actual hood that find a nice big bracket that's attached to the frame of the car up by the base of the windshield. So he looks at everybody, and this is how he's teaching them. He says, you see these hooks? These hooks come right here, and they plant right here on the frame. If they weren't there and you got in an accident, it'd shoot the hood right through and cut your wife's head off. Okay? So now, I'm sorry, Wes, but you just saw your wife get decapitated in your new BMW, right? And it's like, wow, are you kidding me? And then he would walk him around. He'd show him, and when he popped the trunk, the typical Italian mafia answer was he popped the trunk, and he'd look at it, and he'd look down and go, you see that? You could fit like 4 bodies in there. Okay, so right now, everybody listening to this already is picturing a trunk. I don't know which one, and there's 4 bodies in it, right? And so now stop and ask yourself, do you want to go on a test drive in the Deathmobile? I really don't, and I don't care how much rapport we've built. You've just decapitated a family member, and there's 4 bodies in the trunk of this vehicle. I'm not comfortable with you as a salesperson, and I'm sure not feeling good about driving this vehicle. And understand, it with his delivery and the way he said it, it worked for him.
Yeah.
It didn't work for the guy from Nicaragua. It didn't work from the guy who was coming from El Monte. It didn't work from the Huntington Beach native that came up who was, whoa, dude. And then he looks over and, he's like, hey, bro, you could fit like 4 bodies in there.
You could fit like 4 dolphins that you just saved from a net, but then killed them with your surfboard, man.
Right. And so all of a sudden, and I'm like, you got to control the picture in the client's head.
Yep.
Right. And that's what I look at and say, your words are so powerful in this business. And it's all about that. And if you look, it's going to affect your personal life as well. And it's just the matter. You are, again, they say the quality of life is dependent on the questions you ask. Okay. And it's the words that you're choosing to use.
Yep.
And that's how you're going to elevate yourself from somebody else. I believe in matching and mirroring wholeheartedly, but I believe in putting in the right vocabulary to get you there. And that's what's going to help somebody who's new in the business. Right. Right? Somebody new in the business, what do most people do? They go, here, go shadow the old timer. Mm-hmm. Right? And the old timer's there. Sales has not changed. Let's be real. How we get customers is the only thing that ever changes. Right? How the customer finds us. I look and I say, you know what? I'm going to buy from somebody I like. Yep. Right? Otherwise, gross is in the tank if I have to buy from somebody I don't like because I'm buying in spite of you. Yep. In the automotive world, it's 71% of the people that bought a car at that dealership, when you ask them why, they go, it's because I liked my salesperson. Yep. And everybody goes, that's really important. I go, no, what you have to understand is 29% of the people bought in spite of you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That means you're the only one with that car, or your price was so low that I was willing to put up with that mediocre service. Right. Right. And it's to the point today that just being polite and just being a really nice person to somebody is considered almost flirting. Mm-hmm. Right. It's so backwards right now because nobody's used to customer service. Yep. Okay, when you stop and ask yourself with people right now, if you're looking and saying, how do I get customer loyalty? First thing you got to do is make sure that they're not satisfied, that they're actually ecstatic with you. Yep. Right? Because right now, the definition of customer satisfaction just means they're not against you. Yep. Right? If you went through the drive-through today, don't do it. But if you went through a drive-through and you popped out the other side of the drive-through and you looked in the bag and everything was right, do you pull over and go, yes, score, I got my order right? You know what? Yelp review, baby, right now. Right?
That reminds me of Leo Getz. You remember Leo Getz?
I do. Yeah, okay.
They blank you at the drive-thru.
Yes, exactly. And I stop and look and go, just because we get service, we're expecting service. Yep. You know what? As a manager, as anybody who somebody is calling on for sales, to me, I expect you to be a really good salesperson. I would expect that. Okay. I love getting phone calls at my house. Somebody calls. I don't have a home phone anymore. But if I get a sales call that pops up on my phone, I always look and I interrupt them. I go, great assumptive close. Yeah. Okay. Great. Wow. That led me right. That was a trial close, wasn't it? And they go, and they wondered. I'm like, look, you're on script. I know. Okay. Breathe a little bit. Let's talk like human beings. And we're so busy pushing our agenda, we forgot to realize what the customer's agenda is.
Yep.
And that's where we're looking for. But remember, nobody wants to buy from you. Why? Because they either don't have a time, right, or they're afraid, okay, or it's going to come down to just flat out, can they afford you?
Right.
And so it's just a matter of, can I build enough value in me that they're going to actually see that this is something that's worthwhile?
Yeah. Very cool. You're right, man. Things haven't changed. It's so funny. I'm thinking back on your Camry. I sold mobile homes for about 2 years, man, in Mobile, Alabama, and Corinth, Mississippi. Population 11,000. Salute.
Wow.
And this woman comes in.
That's a pretty stagnant market right there.
Well, this woman came in, and she says, hey, I'd like to look at some of your trailers. She says, well, manufactured homes. And I said, ma'am, you're the one buying it. You can call it anything you want as long as you buy it from me. Like you can use any word you want.
Yes, I agree. You know what I find a lot, Wes, is with a lot of the sales to people today, I think if you're going to sit back and say, I want to be in sales, I'd say let's sit down. First thing I want you to do is learn, I don't care which one it is, sit down and learn a personality profiling process.
Yeah.
Right? Sit down and find out who it is you're talking to, right? When I go into dealerships or into customer service centers, when I go in there, I teach, I spend maybe 45 minutes on it, but I use the DISC profile.
Yep.
Right? And I'll sit down with the DISC, and I mean, it's down and dirty. It's just enough to get them to understand what's there. But then I build and I teach them to identify the personality, because when I'm talking to certain personalities, I got to either match it, step back, or take control. And if we're going to just sit back and take control on somebody who only wants to be in control, then, it's going to be a lose situation.
Yep.
And so it's going to be me asking you questions instead of you asking me questions, because I can sit and talk all day long, and with, our personalities being similar, I can say, great, I was in control of this, when we sit back and realize that you were the one asking the questions. And so that ultimately makes you in control.
Yeah, I always say, whoever's asking questions is in control of the conversation, huh?
Yes, I laugh and I said, there was never a doubt that Oprah was in control of her show. Mm-hmm. Because if you got off on a tangent and you started answering questions and getting excited, she'd ask you the next question, and the camera had to come back to her. Yeah. She knew it. And so it was about, keeping it with her and keeping it. The control. I always say, if you're going to ask somebody, the A-B, question, do you want A or do you want B? I giggled to myself because I'm like, I could have given you C, but you get to feel like you're in control because you picked A and B, and I know I can stay in control because I have C in my pocket.
Yeah, that's the old, you probably heard the old Tom Hopkins where he does it with a deck of cards.
Yes.
And so he fans them out, right? And so he tells you to pick a card, and I may forget it. I haven't done this in a long time, but you pick a card. Basically, you have to answer, or he knows the card, but it's like, is it, black or red? And they'll say, black. And he'll say, and that leaves us with red. So then they have to pick red. And if they pick the right one, he'd say, and then the next, so, odd or even. They'll say even, but he wants them to go odd. Say, which leaves us with, and they have to go odd. And just by one of those two responses, either saying great choice or that leaves us with, he's controlling that conversation all the way down to that exact card. I'm going to have to go look that up. Do you remember it?
I do know exactly what you're saying. So he can take you directly where he wants to because, again, asking the question, and he makes it with the answer is always going to be where he wants to direct next. And we can do that with any part of a sales process. It's just about, do you have the end in mind when you start it?
Right.
And that's where most people go, okay, I'm going to sit down, and we get stuck in what I call rapport land.
Yeah.
Right? And we just sit there going, okay, great. Oh, I had a great conversation with this guy. and what was the result? I'll follow up with them next week. Well, I'm not calling the customer just to hang out and talk to them over the phone.
Right.
That'll be my lead opener deal. If that's the people I need to get on the phone, then I'll just play the challenger that comes back and says, here's the product that will get you through what you want, but you got to make the decision.
Well, this was hard for me to internalize for a long time because I felt like I was manipulating. And what I had to internalize was that if my goals, right, if the objective is honest and pure and right, and I'm selling something that's good and ethical, right, and that people like and want and need. I'm not going to try to, if I'm selling cars, I'm not going to try to jack some kid up and, put him into a $40,000 car when I know all he can afford is a $20,000 Civic,
Yep.
But if I know it's that or buying some beater, and he tells me a situation and he's, new in town and doesn't have a good mechanic and all these other things, it's going to just take him for a ride. And I'm helping him justify, to put himself in a better position to own that. I guess it's based on your motives, right? As long as they're right, it's not manipulation. You maybe call it persuasion,
I usually call it influence.
Okay.
Right? You can influence somebody in one direction or another, and it only becomes manipulation when the gain is for you. Okay. Instead of the customer.
I like that.
And that's what I look at. And I can influence the direction of this sale to my benefit, or I can direct it to our benefit.
Right.
Right. And I don't believe that it's about who can give it the cheapest. Every study that goes out there and talks about that, I think price always comes in at like the 6th or 7th ranking on why somebody's doing business with somebody, regardless of the industry.
Right.
And so it is that way. We've all met that person that when you talk to them, you felt greasy and slimy because you talked to the person.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay, because when you stop and realize it, you weren't talking to them. They were talking. They were the one guiding the control. I'll tell you this. I got on the airplane last night. I'm flying back from Atlanta, and a pilot walks in who's not part of the crew, who's just hitching a ride.
Right.
And he's actually wearing a bomber jacket. I was like, hey, it's the first a pilot I've seen actually wearing a bomber jacket. And the guy walked in, and I will tell you, within 5 minutes, I heard that he ranked 38 out of 1,900 pilots in this new program that they have going on. And not one person asked him, what do you rank out of all the pilots going through this merger with the two companies? And I sat back and I was like, okay. And I looked around and I'm watching everybody as their eyes are rolling, right? And he's introducing himself and talking to people and explaining all of these things where it's all about him. And I was like, there's such a difference between somebody who's confident and somebody who's cocky. And then there's just, plain arrogant. Mm-hmm. And he stood up, he teased the flight attendant while she was going through the mandatory, here's our exits and here's where the bag falls from the sky and will save us. But I sat back and I looked at him, I'm like, the guy is in it for his own agenda. Yep. And it didn't matter. Everybody that when you talk to them, and we've all heard this and we've all seen this person, you just got to make sure it's not you. Yep. But when you sit back and that person starts talking, and if your goal is to interrupt with let me one up you, or let me redirect the conversation back to me, you're not selling. You're going to wonder why all these sales calls fail. You wonder why you don't get asked back. You wonder why there is no close at the end, is because every time they introduce something, you think you got to one up, or you think you got to participate, and you go, I got to build rapport, so let me say something about this. Right? And let me make up the story. I used to have guys all the time that, this was one of the sleazier guys. He used to sit back at the dealership, and he had pictures of kids that weren't his. In his drawer. So if the person started talking about kids, when they turned their back, he popped it back up and stuck it next to it. And he's like, oh, here's my kids, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, there's a process. I put a book together about a year ago, and right now it's just in the audio format, and I'm about to change it into actually put it out. But it's called Internal Congruence. Right? And is the words coming out, whatever you're saying out of your mouth, does it actually sit right with you on the inside?
Right.
Okay? Because that's how people are picking up. Your body's giving off cues that says, you know what? You're lying. You are so not congruent right now, which means it isn't believable. When I sit down and talk to people all the time, I'll sit in a dealership and I'll train these people and I'll say, look, this is what it is right here. The answer is, you know what? You're the largest dealership in the area. And they go, but we're not. I go, well, define area. Guess what? On this street, we're the largest XYZ brand dealership in the area. Right.
Yep.
And so I said, the area is an ambiguous term, but whatever it is we're going to say, it has to sit right in with you. And that's why I always laugh, because I'm like, you know what? Not every script works.
Sure.
And a script works better than winging it. And that's the problem a lot of times in sales. That's one of the things that continued from old school to new school, right? Is the fact that we think winging it is the way to go. And it's your preparedness that's going to make you right. So
I had a guy on, Jeff Giannakovo. Hope I got that right. He was on. I have to look him up real quick, but he's the owner of Gardner's Mattress and More, and they're killing it selling mattresses, and they have things scripted and choreographed, and sales guys would come in and say, yeah, I don't need a script. I'm just going to kind of, wing it, that sort of thing. He says, well, if you're okay with me paying you in a haphazard, winging it fashion, then then you can sell in a winging it haphazard fashion.
Absolutely.
Okay, we won't do it that way.
Right. And that's, like I will tell you, I had one of my top employees. I took her two different companies with me. Her name's Vicky, and she was one of those people that as I put a script out and I said, okay, great. When you have nothing, a script is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Okay. But what you have to do is it's going to take a lot of the coaching and mentoring side back, where she would come back and she'd go, okay, I could read this, but I don't understand it. And I was like, okay, so I always go back through and teach the psychology behind everything I'm saying in the script, because you know what, Wes, if I handed you a phone and said, here, make a sales call, you'd make it and you'd get a great result. But that's because of your experience. But if I took you out of any industry that's out there that's foreign to you and I gave you a script, you're going to get some results. Right? But you wouldn't get as great of results as if you understood why you were saying what you were saying. And when you turned around and said, what I used to do is she goes, okay, that doesn't sound like me. And because I knew the team and I spend time to get to know them, I'd go, okay, let's tweak the wording so it's words that you use that mean something to you, so you don't come off as if you're lying or reading.
Right.
And then I would just turn that around and I would pick up words. And so I used to laugh and I used to say, okay, let me write it in Vicky speak. Mm-hmm. Right? And I would take that script and tweak it. And then I'd grab the next person and go, let me write it in Allie speak. Let me write it in Ray speak. And so taking the script and modifying it to the person who's saying it, it frees them up to do it. And so, but if you don't understand why you're saying what you're saying in the initial script, we're just going to get standard results.
Right.
Okay, and scripts will get you standard results. If you want exceptional, then it needs to come from that person. And it's always the person that's been around long enough who knows what they can cut out and what they don't have to say and what they do need to say to move it to the next step. And that's the person we always look at and go, there's my superstar. Well, are they on script? Not necessarily. No. Or they're on script and their belief level in the script is so amazing that it comes through.
Right. Amen. Well, thank you, sir. This has been fantastic. Where should we send our listeners to connect with you?
To connect with me, the Twitter is Joe Ingram Tweets. If you want to, you can also go visit me on the web at thebdcgenius.com, and that's BDC for Business Development Center. Right? Or bring the cash. That's there. Right? And so, I'll answer any question. Hit the contact page and pop up right on my phone if I'm not sitting in front of a client. And then I have no worries with getting back to somebody and helping them that way. I can do coaching. I can do personal stuff. I can help companies. If you've got a company and you've got a team of people that says, you know what, we're doing all right, but I want to get better. we can come in and help it. But it's understand, I will come in and challenge you.
Right.
I will not come in and just sell you to sell you. The thing is that we need to get better. The process is come in and dig into your business, understand where you're at.
Right.
And if you're brand new in sales, it's the same deal. I need to know what you're selling so I can help. Because not everything's going to work across every industry. Okay. Other than being nice to people.
So it's not bring the cookies?
No,
okay.
no,
All right.
no, that's not it at all. It's always cash. The
Bring
C's
the
always
cash.
Yeah, bring the cash. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Bathe the cat, I think is what you were doing.
Hey, bring me some of those Dominican Republic cigars, and I'll give you a little Temecula wine, and we will chillax.
Oh, that sounds like a plan, because I did happen to get some across with me. You're going to love them.
All right. Very nice. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you. I do.
All right, man. See you.
Thanks, Les. Bye.
There you have it. Good stuff. Told you Joe was a good guy, despite working as an attorney, or not as an attorney, with a law firm at least, helping their marketing. He figured out he had a soul. He couldn't keep helping those people. Then he got into car sales and insurance. But hey, he's a good dude. The principles, as you can see, work across all industries. At the end of the day, we are human beings trying to connect with other human beings. Okay, we have our own fears, uncertainties, and doubts. As a salesperson, your job is to transfer the feeling of confidence so they are confident and comfortable doing business with you. Okay, you do that by asking better questions. And as Joe mentioned on when you're working the phone, the goal is to sell the appointment, right? Not sell the product. People can easily say no on the phone. Okay, so get them to come in. And if you think cold calling is dead, if you think the phone is dead, then you are sadly mistaken, or you are an internet marketing genius. Okay, and if you are the latter, please give me a call, and I will have you as a guest on the Sales Podcast. So thanks for listening. As always, you can visit thesaleswhisper.com/Joe-Ingram to get the notes from today's podcast. And now I'm going to head down to San Diego for the National Speakers Association chapter meeting. If you need a speaker, either like a national conference or even a regional thing, or a little small sales event in your office, as long as you're in Southern California, or I can drive to you, let me know. Visit thesaleswhisper.com. The easy thing to do is scroll down on the footer, and there you'll see a link to my sales training and speaking and motivation, or visit thesaleswhisper.com/keynote-speaker. And I will come speak for money for you. So thanks for listening, and be sure to visit thesaleswhisper.com/Joe-Ingram for all the notes. Share the love, and remember to sell different.